Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I call to order the February 13th meeting of the Portsmouth Community Network Broadband Authority, and glad to see you all here. Seemed like forever since we saw each other, but we're moving ahead with our agenda as printed, and we'll begin with our roll call. And Ms. Deborah White, if you'll call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Glover?
Here.
Mr. Hugel?
Here.
Mr. Moody is absent. Mr. Tillage?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker is absent. Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Here. Thank you. All right, now we're in order to adopt the minutes of the last meeting. If you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at those, it is in your packet. If you can take a look at them, and we'll entertain a motion to approve the last meeting.
I move to adopt.
Second.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and properly second. And Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Glover?
Yes.
Mr. Hugel?
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Moody is absent. Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Whitaker is absent. Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have adopted our minutes. We're up to our discussion items right now, and first up is our update on the Portsmouth Community Local Fiber Ring. And so we'll hear from Mr. Hayes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the authority, Madam Manager, Madam Attorney, Madam Clerk. Pretty much the update, we'll probably find much of that information also somewhat intertwined with our strategy portion as well. But we'll just start off by saying that the build out for our local physical ring that we have that we're working on is now at about 99% redundant in terms of completion. So the actual ring itself, we're literally using portions of the ring now for government services, and for complete redundancy, we're just waiting on a small segment out at College Drive where we literally have to cross over into the city of Suffolk and then connect back to the other end of College Drive in Portsmouth. As communicated in the past, that's that's already been approved, but we just have to, it's making its way with the actual written agreement piece. And so we'll just stay diligent on that part, getting complete. This evening, we have with us for the presentation Mr. Jeff Biku, who's our fiber consultant with Broadband Telecom Services, as well as the company of Global Links, Mr. Chris Mitchell, and I think Mr. Greg Twitt, who is the President and CEO, will be joining us here in just a moment. And so if we will, at this time, Madam Chair, I'd like to call up Mr. Chris Mitchell to start that presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Yep.
Mr. Chris Mitchell, if you would take the floor.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone.
Afternoon.
Again, I am Chris Mitchell. I am the Director of Sales with Global Links Data Centers, and the President CEO, Greg Twitt, will be joining us momentarily. We put together a presentation for you today to talk about who we are as a company and to talk about what we propose for the city of Portsmouth, taking the city of Portsmouth forward from a technology perspective. As it says, Global Links, building a digital network of carrier-neutral data centers and subsea cable infrastructure for Hampton Roads. Next. So Global Links is committed to telecommunications, and we are a locally owned and operated company headquartered in Virginia Beach. We've been operational since 2019. Global Links completed construction of the only carrier-neutral data center in Virginia Beach in Corporate Landing Park, and is the only data center in Virginia Beach. The Global Links Data Center has now been in full operation for over 4 years and has attracted a large number of new network carriers now serving the community, and is hosting in a secure environment a number of Hampton Roads' leading businesses for their data backup needs, cloud and internet services, providing low latency, diversity, and unparalleled cost savings. An additional purpose of this initiative was to ensure that Hampton Roads has access to all subsea cables, both present and in the future. Global Links is directly connected to Telsius, Maria, Brusa, and the Donat subsea cables. With the completion of Global Links Sandbridge project, subsea infrastructure, and its new supporting cable landing station, Global Links will be ready to house an additional 4 subsea cables for the city of, or for Virginia Beach. Next slide, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
We are what you call a carrier neutral facility. So in our data center, we have both national internet carriers and global internet carriers. The benefit is for all of our customers that are in our data center, they are able to choose from any of these carriers. The benefit is that from a pricing perspective is very, very aggressive pricing that customers are able to take advantage of coming through our data center being co-located there in Global Links. And this is our new facility coming up, and we're in the process of an expansion right now, and we'll be able to show you more of that. Next slide. This is our data center in the inception back in 2019. So this is the structure of the unit. What makes us unique as a data center is most data centers carry their electrical underneath the raised floor. One of the things that we did differently is all of our electrical is overhead. And we feel that by having it overhead as opposed to under the floor, in the event anything was able to happen, we position ourselves not to be interrupted with our services. In Global Links Virginia Beach data centers, we only use top-of-the-line equipment that is specifically for data centers. So we use Starline A and B busways, Tier 3 up time equivalent. We are a full 2N+1 data center, one of only a handful in the state of Virginia. Most data centers are N+1. What a 2N+1 means is that we are fully redundant. So we can take down any part of our data center and continue to be operational without any interruption whatsoever. That is very key because customers that are in our data center, the last thing they want is interruption of service. They just absolutely cannot afford to have interruption in service. So we are completed and fully operational back from 2019 with 100% uptime. So we have never had an outage in our data center. Even when Dominion Power may have what you call a grid failure, our backup generators tandemly kick in and operate automatically until Dominion services are fully restored. So just to go down more, as I said, we house network carriers and provide leading local businesses with secure server, hosting, and managed services. Next slide. This is our campus. Today we sit on 11.5 acres there at our carrier neutral center in Virginia Beach. We are under construction currently for a data center in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So we are in phase 1. We have completed phase 1, and we're getting ready to start the expansion going forward with bringing in a new set of subsea cables to our data center. And this just gives you a little illustration of what a subsea cable looks like. And obviously these cables lie on the seabed and they traverse from different parts of the world, which we will also cover. But this is where technology is today. There's a lot that goes into it, and these cables are fully monitored and they are protected, housed in metal casings. So 98% of all internet traffic that travels through the world comes across subsea cables. There are approximately 400 subsea cables globally. A subsea cable's life is approximately 25 years. 50% of the 400 cables in the ocean today are nearing end of life. Early cable output were under 10 terabits per second. The current cables in Virginia Beach travel at 250 terabits per second. The new Global Link subsea cables for 2025 going forward will travel over 600 terabits per second. So we're talking about an enormous amount of speed and traffic that these cables will be able to carry, and that is per cable, or per second per cable. The impact of these new cables will mean that Global Links effectively increases Virginia's subsea capacity by more than 500%. Virginia alone is responsible for 67% of all the world's internet traffic today. How does Hampton Roads benefit from additional subsea fiber optics? An additional 4 subsea cables brings the total number of cables into Virginia at 7, and the most subsea cables in one location on the eastern seaboard. So with the cables that we have today, along with the ones that we're bringing in, we will be the ones that have the most. This creates a very viable technology hub, which without a doubt will lead to the creation of a large data center ecosystem, attracting the very best Fortune 500 companies and equipping with lowest latency and high redundancy. We meet with every economic department throughout all of the cities. And one of their main goals is to attract business that is national and international. Every company wants to know what type of internet traffic do you offer and can afford to provide. So terrestrial cables that take them to different parts of the world is very, very important for a company's decision to come into Hampton Roads. So this is a game changer when economic development offices can be able to say, coming into our region, coming into the city of Portsmouth, this is what we're able to give you access to. So to date, Global Links has brought to Virginia Beach an additional 7 new carriers. The latest is Shentel. They are out of West Virginia, and they are the largest carrier, and as well, we brought in Lumos. Their intentions are to provide competitive internet services for enterprise, government, and private homes. And data centers attract high tax revenue for municipalities and the very best tech employment. As we all know, one of the things that many of our young people do today is they attend college here and then they go off somewhere to work. But because of what we're doing at Global Links and bringing in all of these subsea cables, which will attract Fortune 500 companies, it now positions Hampton Roads to be able to keep that skill set here locally, as opposed to just watching it go abroad. And this diagram gives you a good idea of how traversed these cables are, coming from different parts of the world. And all of these cables reside in Global Links today. Next slide. So in Virginia Beach, we have the Maria cable, which travels from Virginia Beach to Balboa, Spain. That's a Microsoft, Facebook, and Telxius cable. The Brusa cable goes from Virginia Beach to Rio, Fantasia, Brazil, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. And then the Donat cable goes from Virginia Beach to Bordeaux, France. And the Confluence cable, which is a new cable that we're bringing in, connects to New Jersey, Virginia Beach, Myrtle Beach, and 2 points in Florida. This gives you just an idea of what's going on with the Sand Bridge project that we have going on now. And here today, these cables that come in to Camp Pendleton, obviously they come in as wet cables, convert to dry cables. These cables come in, the Maria, the Bursa, and the Danot cable come in via fiber, and they connect into global links. With the potential of an additional 4 subsea cables, Virginia Beach will be in the forefront of the world stage with great potential for large data center growth. At the very bottom, you can see where we are bringing in 4 new cables coming in through Sandbridge, and they will come directly into global links. The Confluence cable that I just mentioned, it goes to New Jersey, Virginia, South Carolina, and 2 points of Myrtle Beach. So Global Link's value proposition to the city of Portsmouth next generation network backbone. Benefits of the Global Link's MSA for the city of Portsmouth, and we've had numerous meetings with Cliff Hayes and his department to understand exactly the vision of the city from a technology perspective, what they're looking to do. So we provided a very comprehensive proposal to be able to meet those needs. One would be co-locating, and Global Links will provide the city of Portsmouth to now have a redundant disaster recovery plan off-site. Connecting 700 Center Park, Port Center Parkway will support the city's ecosystem and provide access to national and global internet service providers leveraging cost-effective, high-bandwidth internet. In addition, Global Links provides the city of Portsmouth the ability to establish direct connections with other local cities, thereby enhancing communication efficiency and utilization of public safety applications, optimizing associated costs. When we meet with all of the various cities, the number one thing they talk about is the need for all cities to be able to communicate together. By coming into Global Links, all of those cities that we're working with will now be able to cross-connect to one another, be able to share those synergies. A lot of the public safety applications that all cities use, they can now share that, but they can now do it in a protected, secure environment through Global Links. And we're happy to say that we are excited about the opportunity to work with the great city of Portsmouth. Obviously, we know that this is a historic city with a lot of landmarks, the Coast Guard, and many, many other things. And we're really excited about what we're able to do. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
So the average citizen that's looking at this presentation and seeing all of this technology that's coming, how will this actually benefit them other than that last point as far as public safety communication?
Yes. So Jeff Biku is going to come, and he's going to be able to address that question specifically.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Are you providing service to other cities here in Hampton Roads?
We are currently, yes.
So Virginia Beach, who else?
We're in talks with all of the Hampton Roads cities. Virginia Beach is already in our data center.
Okay.
So we're working through the different solutions with the other cities.
And those solutions would be similar to what you're proposing for us to
Absolutely.
provide off-site backup,
Yes, yes.
recovery, and connectivity.
Right. The city of Virginia Beach has designated Global Links as their super center. So in addition to just co-location services, they are looking to us to provide a host of additional services. On internet services alone, they are saving the city over $600,000 in cost. So when you talk about coming into a data center and taking advantage of those carriers that we have, that's the financial impact that you can get out of doing so.
And so I guess the carriers or the providers you were speaking of is the page that had Lumos, Cox.
Yes.
So us connecting with Global Links, we would choose one of those
Exactly. You would have
providers.
access to all of those providers,
Okay,
right?
all of them.
Yes,
Okay.
and what we do is because we're carrier neutral, there's no margin in it for us, so what we would do is just create that relationship, and then you would be able to take advantage of those services directly.
Right. And you mentioned somewhere in the presentation that the subsea cables have been around for 25 years and they're nearing the end of life. So
Yes.
is that something that you all would be replacing sometime?
Yeah, now the new ones that we have in today are not a part of those ones that are end of life,
Right.
but we're bringing in new ones right now.
Okay.
So, but the other cables that are out there that are throughout the world, they will have to be replaced, no question.
Members, if there are no other questions, Mr. Mitchell, thank you for
Thank
the
you.
presentation.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for an overview of this and I guess the services that Global Link offers. At this time, Mr. Jeff Biku is going to hone into the specific benefits of us in our local ring, connecting to, and our strategy of connecting to those undersea cables and the benefits that we will see as a government, as an entity, but also just having access to that data center and all of those ISPs that you saw. They will be competing not only for our business as a city, but many will see that we have the option of leasing some of the strands that we have, the extra strands that we have with our local ring. Mr. Biku?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So do you guys remember about 2017, 2018, how many providers were in Portsmouth or in the Hampton Roads? One, right? I think Cox was the main one. So what's driving all this? The subsea cables drove the regional fiber ring that's being built. It's bringing competition. So now you got Lumos coming in, which is, they're offering broadband services to the residents. You have Metronet coming in. They've taken over basically Norfolk. They're already getting franchise agreements for Virginia Beach. So prices are going down, bandwidth is going up. That's ultimately what the goal has always been, to identify, what the subsea cables are supposed to do and what it is that the mission for the regional, SNA was supposed to accomplish was drive competition, get that ring in, and it all started with the subsea cables. These subsea cables, so one of the things that we work through economic development with is they're coming into Virginia, but they're taking a path and they're going straight to Ashburn, where 80% of data traffic is. We're working on building how can we utilize that 600 terabits of data, and also work with economic development to bring in companies that can utilize that can benefit from the high speed and the low bandwidth costs. So when we are looking at, I'm actually going to Metronet in February 25th to work with economic development and different companies to give them the benefits of what Virginia Beach has to offer, what Portsmouth has to offer as far as land, bandwidth, capacity, and everything else.
If you could, right there, just put a pin right there, Mr. Biku. If you can notice here, now, this example is just a third of our expenditures and our potential savings. So right now, we pay a provider to connect to a third of our internet for our government facilities. This is just a third, $33,000 a month. By having the relationship with Global Links, because we've already had these conversations with some internet service providers from around the world, they're like clamoring over top of each other to provide services to us. Our bill, for example, for one that is offered would be $11,800, right? So just look at that in terms of what the savings for the city can be and will be for instance. Now, on top of that is not only the cost per se out of pocket, but the bandwidth and the amount of speed. So our provider now offers to us, in a small writing, up to a gig circuit, up to. This will be dedicated fiber, providing to us 10 gigs. So not only are we looking at saving and paying a third of the cost, but we're getting 10 times the speed and more bandwidth for what we will experience not only as a government, but remember, we also offer extra strands for other ISPs who are excited about doing business here in the city and would love to offer that to the citizens. So if you see how we're saving, what it's going to look like as an offering to the citizens as well. For example, I'm sorry.
Mr. Hayes, can I ask you a question? When you said a third, were you talking about the 33,000 represents the expenditure for just a third of our system? Or
So-
are you talking about this?
This expenditure, as we're digging through the expenses that we pay, represents a third of a particular month. We just did a snapshot. That 33,000 you see there represents only a third. So we have 217 sites, but this only represents
75 sites.
75 sites. So I'm trying to begin to paint a picture for you. If that's a third of what we actually are paying, close to 100,000, and the savings have actually been a third of that third, what we actually will end up saving for the government here for the city of Portsmouth is going to be astronomical.
So is that Global Link's 11,000 amount, is that based on a third or is that based on
It's
a
not
total?
going to go up. That price will stay.
Okay.
Unless you exceed capacity, right, and you go past your 10 gig, which is not going to happen for a while. But that price stays consistent. Your 33,000 is a third of what your expenditure. So you can figure your expenditures if you do the math on it. It could probably be 100,000 per month times 12. Figure out what you're paying for on a yearly basis. And that's just actually for internet connection. It's not, you're not talking about phone services or any other, data network services that you're looking at. So once we get all those final numbers, we'll present it, but you're going to see some significant cost savings. So all these green dots are your community anchor institutions. So you've got 217 CAIs, community anchor institutions out there. We received bills for 75 of them. That's how we came up with those numbers. But I also want to point out these green lines over here. So from your ring itself, your green lines are actually, we're going to do some applications for BEAD funding. So we're going to look at getting the cost of all the community anchor institutions covered by BEAD through digital equity and running last mile, let's call it last mile, from the ring to last mile services to your community anchor facilities. Each one of the plan is each one of those anchor facilities should get a gigabit synchronous when it's all said and done. And the equipment that will be required to activate the buildings, we're also going to put that through the BEAD application. When we put the application, the cities themselves are required to put digital equity applications in, not providers. So this is going to be something we're going to be doing ourselves. Any questions?
Yeah, so I only understood about a quarter of what you just said. So you need to dumb it down a little bit. So the green dots, what do those green dots represent?
Community anchor institutions.
Okay,
So,
I got the words. What does it mean? What's a community anchor?
Libraries, rec centers.
fire departments, anything that the city,
So
the
those
city
are
is paying.
Portsmouth City
Location.
locations.
Facilities, correct.
217 Portsmouth City locations. Okay. And the difference between the red lines and the green lines then
The red is your current NGN that's been built. That's your fiber network, that Portsmouth
Okay.
fiber network.
And the green lines have not been built yet, or that's
They're-
old legacy?
The old legacy
That's
infrastructure.
there for the 217 locations where we're currently using service.
Yeah, they might have something connected to it, but you still have to connect it to your ring, your
So
fiber network.
they either don't have a connection at all, or there's some type of connection through our current provider
Right.
that we're paying much more for with less speeds to. For instance, through the investigation of some of these sites, so you notice in the presentation, earlier in the presentation I made the comment in the small footprint, up to. So the providers sell you this big number, but if you look at the fine print, it says up to whatever that number is. And so that's all dependent on what they have invested in their backbone or their infrastructure that they've run. Many of whom have decided not to do a whole lot of upgrade to that infrastructure in the past. They've even been very selective about where to run that backbone to. So thus, not only us as a government, but to the citizens, some of them don't have adequate speeds. And so through this process of us connecting all of our anchor institutions, we're also running right by and passing neighborhoods and opportunities that put us much closer to where they are, which makes us much more attractive to other ISPs, because if an ISP is close by and we can lease strands to them, now our citizens are actually getting higher speeds, greater bandwidth, and paying less. So in terms of quality of life of this issue, the city, as they say, a rising tide raises all boats. Everybody wins by the fact that we have this infrastructure in place with the local ring.
Okay? And are we going to have to build out all of the green lines with 10 gig capacity?
So we will have to connect those green lines for our anchor institutions to have. But the question is the cost avoidance that we would have had to do in the first place. Now we won't necessarily have that same cost.
Okay, and do we know that we need to build out 10 gig capacity? Because does the Churchland Library really need 10 gig access, or is the access that they currently have with the ISP today good enough if we connect it to our ring?
Remember that statement along the way, up to.
Yep.
And so currently we're getting up to 1 gig. And I can tell you it's nowhere near a gig. It's like 25 megabits is what when we test it. Never over that, right? Like 25 meg.
The bill actually says in some places you're paying 300 bucks to put 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up.
So do we need to have a plan then to replace all the green with red?
So that's what we're working on. That's why we're going to try to put it through the BEAD funding. But this is basically the mission of your fiber network. If X amount of strands will be used to activate your most used community anchor institutions, and then the smaller ones we can assess it. If 25 megabits is all they need, then why run fiber to it?
Right.
At the end of the day, we'll see which ones need that capacity. Fire stations, police definitely need it. But we'll address that. All that's part of what we're going to do as an assessment.
Dr. Wood?
Yeah, in regards to the B funding, I thought there was some previous discussion about trying to figure out the discrepancy between what I believe, I don't know if it was the federal showing some, was it the accessibility versus what we thought was actually there. Has that been completed?
So they're still going through the challenge process, okay, and that's still, they'll have the updated maps by the end of this month, hopefully.
And that'll impact on how much funding you get
Well,
through that?
not really, because there's two parts to it. There is the BEAD funding for residential, which is the unserved area, so they're gonna have pockets of unserved. So you might have 5 homes that has been declared unserved in this area over here. So BEAD allows a provider to actually basically run a fiber through a neighborhood to get to those 5 homes, right? And that's how the BEAD for residential will work. This is completely different because whatever money is left over, right, digital equity and BEAD, they want each anchor institution to get a gigabit service. The government wants that. They want to make sure each one is connected with a gigabit synchronous. You know, so and in that case, it's not the service provider. In the residential aspect, the service provider is the one, and it's going to be GTS, I think, you know, that's been being worked on as the main provider for SNA. But the CAIs, the city themselves are going to be applying for it to get the funding to get those green lines connected to the ring. And the beauty of it is you have a ring, right? So it makes it a lot easier when you're doing this application.
So I'm curious, we're seeing what the savings will be approximately for the city. The question again, how will citizens actually see, or do we have any idea of the approximate savings that citizens will see in their service bills?
So I'll say, we now, even outside of the opportunity for the BEAD funding, it's so much attention now and interest, and independently, aside from what we have, there are companies that are saying, just let us in the game. We're not even trying to go for the BEAD funding to help us build our network. We just we'll take the cost of just connecting to you. That's all we want. We just want to connect to you to where your ring is going through extra strands, and we're willing to pay the lease that you all authorize for us to offer. And then those companies are coming. They're ready to make the offers to the constituency, offering internet services at a lower price and much faster speeds through direct fiber. So you can begin to see the benefits. I used to question whether or not it was going to be possible. I would hear it and second guess whether or not some of the providers would really get in the game. We literally have folks offering just about close to agreements. Kelsey's looking at me like, don't go too far. But, but literally, the interest is there.
So this is more like a cost avoidance model. You figure out what you're doing for 5 years, 10 years, what you would have paid for, and then basically how much money you're savings, right? So on a cost avoidance, how much money the city saves, you look at that, it's astronomical, right? But the main goal of this also has been to foster competition. So you're going to have providers coming in, like Cliff was saying, and they're going to give the residents, gigabit speeds at $50. I mean, Cox is not going to compete with that, and they're going to have to rebuild infrastructure to even keep up with it. And that's actually happening now all through Hampton Roads.
So the access will be greater.
Yeah, access will be a lot greater, and the residents will see cheaper cost of bandwidth. I mean, businesses will too. So at the end of the day, that's how it's going to be fostered. Yeah.
But isn't it true, to answer Councilman Whitaker's question, our residents aren't going to have access to a new internet service provider until that internet service provider eventually figures out what we're building out and then rents or leases dark fiber strands on our network to get into those neighborhoods, and then we'll have to come along and convince our neighbors buy my service instead of Cox or Verizon. Yes?
Not necessarily.
And they're not going to buy from the city of Portsmouth, are they?
I mean, it's not the goal of Portsmouth to be a service provider.
Right.
But your providers will come in and start looking for franchise agreements so that they can activate different areas. And I think that's one of the things Lewis is doing, right? Is they're leasing a piece of the fiber so they can get to a certain area and they can sell services. So I think,
So I think
Portsmouth
we're
is-
saying the same thing. Before they come to my neighborhood, they are going to have to work out a deal to lease a portion of our infrastructure in order to provide service into that neighborhood.
with their
Or,
own infrastructure.
or
Put their own in.
they will take the expense of trying to build out their own, having to get permits and everything else. So, yeah.
So I guess the communities are pretty much not stuck with, but they still are going to be going with the service providers they have until an option is made for them to join this one.
Yeah, and I'll guarantee you're going to have people knocking on their doors very soon, want to talk to this authority basically
Right.
about getting, franchise agreements and being able to provide services in Portsmouth. So,
But in the short term, I think the goal that was sought after was for the city to acquire faster speeds, more connectivity, and lower their cost. Is that goal in
for
the
the
short
city.
term will be met,
And reliability.
and reliability.
that's what we're working on.
Right.
And then housing also. So we're also looking at the underserved housing,
Right.
that we can help. Where I know you
Sure.
guys have some wireless in some areas. We're looking at how we can connect those buildings and also working with GTS to see how they can actually get to some of those buildings and get quick activations. So you guys know what's going on with the SNA, right? So they have certain goals that has to be met. We're working with them to help them achieve those goals.
So the CAIs, do they include any of the Portsmouth redevelopment and housing properties? Are they
All of
included
the
in that
housing
217?
authority that you asked me for that map, we're going to be connecting to all of them.
I think it does. I have to check. I have to check and see if it does or not.
It will include making sure that higher speeds are at all of the public housing as well. That's all included in our plan.
Well, that's what the GTS part of this is. They're looking at getting the public housing connected, right, through their network. So they're going to start surveying and looking at different housings that they can get connected. So even if it's not part of CAI, they will get connected.
So, Mr. Biku, when he refers to the SNA, he's talking about the regional partnership that we have. So, parallel to what you have local, in this local ring, there's a regional ring that's also connecting. And through that regional ring, there's some interest in the ISP that's contracted through the regional ring to provide services as well. That's the GTS that he keeps referring to.
That's being dived into.
Yeah. Correct.
Question about the CAIs over in this section of the Port Center Parkway. It seems like there are a lot there, and then as you go west to Western Branch, there's less. Is that, how were those selected to be the 217?
So we just pulled up data, Portsmouth data that actually lists all the CAIs. So there's 217 anchor institutions that are part of Portsmouth.
Okay,
This
so
is
those are already there.
actually what you
That's
have.
actually what you have, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Those are city buildings, right?
Yeah.
Libraries, schools.
Police, fire, library, schools. Yep, go ahead.
So going back to the Global Links discussion, 4 new cables coming ashore. How's the connectivity getting from those 4 new cables to Ashburn? Is it going to come through our regional network, or are they running their own infrastructure from the data centers up in Ashburn down to Virginia Beach?
Yeah, a couple of providers that already have direct fibers that's running from Global Links that goes all the way to Ashburn.
Yeah.
And also connects to QTS. So there's a network already that actually connects terrestrial fiber to those data centers. Hit the next one. And this is just a very simple connection. So 700 ports Center Parkway from Global Links. And again, I really want to point out, right? 10 gigabits of internet bandwidth at Global Links from one of the providers, $550. You know, that was unheard of 3 years ago. And then your offsite co-location, that $8,490 is basically, you know, moving some of your data centers over. So that's not just for internet connection. That's actually also helping the city with the disaster recovery planning as well. And that's it, guys. Any questions?
Just one question. I know that we had some people come to us and wanted to build out a data center. So with this Global Link connection, there's no need for anyone to try to build it, or would someone still be interested?
So let's talk about data centers a little bit, right? So there's data centers, and then there's carrier neutral facilities, right? So what the subsea cables are doing is they're carrier neutral facilities where you have to go from the subsea to terrestrial, and that's the facilities he's bringing in, right? Those are funded by some very big, powerful players. And I think there are going to be some announcements later on, maybe 60 days, that's going to really impact the region as well. Data centers are all over the place, and they're required. So you have data centers all over the United States and globally that tie these fibers back into them. So one of the economic development initiatives we have is through SNA, and through that, looking and seeing, what does Portsmouth have to offer as far as, it doesn't have that much land, right? But Chesapeake does. So if we're through economic development finding companies that wants to build data centers, well, there's land and power that'll accommodate it. Chesapeake is probably the best place, I would say, or Suffolk, right? Virginia Beach is pretty saturated. Norfolk, there's no room. So if we look at the benefits of each, we're also looking at financial institutions because of the low latency that these subsea cables are bringing in, and seeing how we can entice financial organizations to come in here and set up shop, because low latency, high capacity bandwidth, startup companies, that's kind of why we're trying to join all the economic development from all the cities together and kind of have a main plan of how we can approach the benefits of this. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Any other ones?
All right.
Does our 10 gig pipe run through the Innovation District?
Yes.
Okay.
Our local ring strategically runs right around all of your strategic locations. Even, I recall, Councilman Hugel, early on in our local broadband meetings, you had inquired about the forecasted place for our public safety headquarters, so to speak, and how far we would be able. It's running right past there, and so we'll be able to hop right on. And that's the case with most of the strategic initiatives that the city has already started.
I think it's safe to say that anywhere in Portsmouth, you can get fiber connectivity now with the ring you guys built. And then you have the backhaul coming in from Global Links, which is get enough capacity. So, yeah, any district you want to get connected can be connected. All right, thank you.
Is there anybody else besides Global Links that does what Global Links does in Virginia Beach?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've been doing this. I've been working with the cities for a while. 2017, you had Point One coming in. They occupied some land. They got the tax breaks on the properties that they were going to build. They never built. There's multiple other data center companies that have been coming from Richmond, coming from up north, and and working with economic development, taking the land, and then 5 years later they haven't put anything on it. So the only person and the company has actually been able to basically put their money where their mouth is basically Global Link.
Okay.
And I'll just conclude by also sharing that this local ring, together with the regional ring, is a part also of a strategy for the area to be a magnet and a global internet hub. So I guess for the planners from around the world, there are certain areas that they look at on maps to say what's a global internet hub based on the traffic, the research, the volume of data, the processing power, et cetera, and the partnerships and the usage of the internet, economic development, jobs, et cetera, all become, an interest if you become a global internet hub. We're already a hub in terms of, I would say, in the country along the East Coast because of those undersea cables that are coming in. But to make this an actual global internet hub is another piece of forecasting, if you will, all along 64, from the Richmond metro area on down to Hampton Roads, and looking at that in terms of connectivity. One of the most recent announcements, the biggest announcements in terms of processing power, data centers, and interests and talent probably was with Jefferson Labs in that announcement, and everything that went into trying to get that contract here. Now it's here. Much of that application, much of the work of trying to get that contract was built on the premise that there's going to be access to these high speeds and capacity, right? But also the research capabilities with our colleges and universities that are here. So it's all a part of a greater plan, and it's great that we're in the mix of all of that that'll be going on.
So is the major player in all this really, the major player in all of this technology that's coming really for the defense industry purposes?
No, that's just a part of it. That's
this,
a key part,
yeah,
but that's only a fraction of it. We have research not only by our existing universities that needs to happen, needs to take place, but as Mr. Biko pointed out, Mr. Mitchell pointed out, you're talking about Fortune 500 companies who just want to be in the vicinity. They want to be in the mix. They want to be in the game. And with this infrastructure that we have in place, it's an excellent tool for leverage in trying to draw and become that magnet for all of that interest. And what comes with that is also opportunities for the talent, right? It'll bring some talent, but it also gives our young folks who are going to be getting into their careers opportunities to say, hey, I want to be where company XYZ is, et cetera.
One of the things we're working on right now is we're working with ODU, and we're connecting their new facility in Town Center through utilize the city's fiber, and then looking where their other facilities are, connecting them as well too, and they're connecting to subsea cables. So it's always been the main goal for higher ed to get connected to these. And you remember the master plan, right? The master plan was always higher ed, city facilities and everything else, and that's what's happening right now. So,
I mean, and then on top of that, I need to talk to Madam Manager about internships and availability, because I'm getting contacted now by some of those institutions offering students that are working on their PhDs, their masters in engineering and comp sci, and they're ready to help now with very little investment from the city, but their stipends and so forth will be paid by the private sector. So we can get that talent at the same time without having to pay that same expense. So.
Great discussion. If there are no other questions, no other presentations, we'll move into the other part of our agenda, and that is closed session. We don't have any closed session matters. And future business topics, new business. I do have a letter from a member written today. It's addressed to the Portsmouth Broadband Authority members, care of Lisa Lucasberg, Chair. Dear colleagues, I am sending this communication to inform you of my resignation from the Portsmouth Broadband Authority effective 2/13/24, that's today. It is my desire to have a citizen of Portsmouth with broadband expertise and experience appointed to the authority in order to represent the best interests of our community. Respectfully, Mayor Shannon Lee Glover, member. So we have that before us, and I guess the question is, have we collected any applications for members interested in?
We have not opened it up because we weren't sure exactly how it was going to evolve with the city council, well, with the board members. And now that you have that resignation, we can now open it up, but we didn't want to open it up and have people sitting and waiting
Right.
to get on the board that they may never get on.
Okay, all right. So members, this is before us, and is there any discussion? Okay, all right. Hearing none, we'll
Open up
hold
the
it until we
process.
open up the process, and then we'll move forward with that. So does Member Glover remain on as a member until the replacement come?
We have enough council members that, enough board members that that's not necessary.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clear that for you, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. All right, then our next meeting will be April 9th. April 9th?
Because you have no first meeting in March
Correct.
in a few minutes.
Okay, we'll see. Okay. All right, so our next meeting will be April 9th at 4 o'clock, and we don't have any public speakers who have.
Now.
Okay, then we stand adjourned.